Friends, the Insecurity Project vision for 2021. I get that it's September, not January, but nevertheless, it's important to be very clear about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, where it's heading, and what that means for you. So I've been busy writing, and that's been very meaningful for me, but it has also been a welcome distraction from the state of affairs in the world. And I think I've been using that as a hideout in some way because I was so overwhelmed. I don't like the situation, but felt powerless to do anything about it. I felt like I had nothing to contribute and all the moving parts were outside of my control. And so what would be the point in getting upset about something that I could not influence? However, after 2 or 3 very painful conversations, and I do mean very painful, that floored me. It really did, because I began to realize that that's an inappropriate response, that there is some stuff happening in the world today, and it is important for me to be across it. And specifically, because I have somewhat of a voice. There are a few people around the world that find value in the Insecurity Project, and insecurity and COVID have some very important correlations. It's important to understand the intersection of that. So I do want to get a little political on you, and that's not usual for me, but it's very important. And then I have an exciting update to share with you at the end. But first, I've come to realize, and it's the first time I've ever heard myself say this out loud, and strange for me to say, but a very important thing, and that is to realize it's not wise to trust the government. That's not a particularly derogatory or inflammatory thing to say. It's just speaking clearly. In our country and in many other countries, it's not a prerequisite to be a good human being in order to be a good politician. Those two things can be diametrically opposed. Our best politicians understand the political game. They understand what it takes to get power and influence, and they understand how to keep it, and they play that game very well. The skills required to play that game are very different from the skills required to play the human game. By the time a politician has got to the place of influence, often they've had to sell their soul in all kinds of compromising ways to maintain that power and have a platform and a voice. By the time they've got the ability to speak, they have compromised their moral fiber and their humanity. And so they're not speaking from a place of great wholeheartedness or integrity. Now, it's also important to say out loud and on purpose, I'm not a fan of our political landscape in Australia. I don't particularly think our politicians, our leaders, are malicious. I don't think they have an agenda to harm us. I just think they're stupid. I do. I don't know how they got to be where they are. I don't know what they had to do to get there, but I do not trust their skill in leading me. I do not trust the information they're being fed. I do not trust the agendas being played behind the scenes. It's also important just to consider the whole landscape, that not everyone in the world has my or your best agenda at heart. There are people who have a lot of money and they would like to keep it that way. In order to have a lot of money, they need people in power to make decisions that help them have more money, which works really well for the people who are in power, because it turns out they need people with a lot of money to keep voting them and to keep helping them stay in power. So there's a lot of backroom deals that go on in order for power and money to stay in the same hands. People who've got power and money don't want to give it up anytime soon, which compromises their decision-making. It has to. That's the agenda. The agenda is not the well-being for the average punter. Therefore, it will be unwise to trust what you hear politicians say. So I'd gone along with the rhetoric. I'd gone along with the propaganda just because I didn't know another way. I was afraid to have a look. But having had a look this week, there's all kinds of things that could be analysed. But the one thing that particularly caught my attention is just the fact that the propaganda about this being a health issue, a global health issue, it just can't be sustained empirically. There's no data that would back that up. If this is a global health issue, then all the decision-making would reflect that that's the ultimate priority. But the decision-making that we're being given undermines this and often causes worse health problems in all kinds of horrible and long-lasting ways than the problem it's seeking to solve. So if it's not a health problem, then it has to be about money and power, which sounds dramatic and evil, but it's not my point to be dramatic. It's just to be sober about this, because it turns out all it takes for evil to survive in the world is for good men to do nothing. And there have been plenty of times in history where evil has risen and prospered because good men have done nothing, and plenty of other times where evil has been stopped and squashed and resisted because good men and women have had a voice and used their rights. So, the really interesting thing, and the thing that really got me back in the game, was to go, and ultimately this still is an insecurity problem. It is out of great insecurity that people with wealth want to keep it. It's their status, it's their ego, it's their identity that's all garnished is all strengthened by their great wealth that they've got. Without that, they don't know who they are. That's a massive insecurity issue. It's our politicians' insecurity that causes them to not have a backbone, to not make difficult decisions, to make popular decisions, to make decisions that are going to keep them in power. They don't want to lose. That's an insecurity thing. So because of the insecurity of the global elite, financially and politically, we, the average person, suffer greatly. So if the Insecurity Project doesn't have anything to say on that level, what's the point of existing? What's the point of doing anything? There must be loud, clear communication about the fact that there is a problem, and our global problem is an insecurity one. Secondary to that, but probably more important, is the insecurity of the average person, because it is insecure people that then can be motivated and controlled and bullied by fear. If we have insecurity, then governments have leverage. There's things that they can threaten. There's things that they can withhold. They have bargaining power. If there's no insecurity, then there's nothing they can really threaten. There's nothing they can withhold that manipulates us to give away our freedom, to stop thinking rationally, to go along with what we have to do. So it is essential for the sake of our future, and not being dramatic, but these are dangerous times. These are important issues. There are decisions being made that will have significant ramifications for you and me, for our children and the generations to come. So we must have conversations about this. And you might be saying, Jamin, I've been having these conversations for ages. Where have you been? Yeah, I'm sorry. Where have I been? But anyway, here I am now, and got some stuff to say. So let's keep talking about this. And it seems everyone is talking now, and good, great. Let's talk. Let's go, because there is some stuff we can do. You've got to realize that hopelessness is simply the illusion of no choice. The moment you feel like you're out of options, hope evaporates. But when you realize it's just an illusion, there's a whole bunch of choice you can and do have, and that choice has dramatic impact on the world, then hope returns. So here are some of the key choices that we each have, and some of the real essential part of the Insecurity Project vision, Insecurity Project vision in COVID-related times. So firstly, we must wake up, and we must grow up. Not just wake up, by the way, because there's a lot of aggressive rhetoric from those who are already awake, who can see, who don't already trust the government, who are suspicious, and they're very upset at the sheeple, those who are gullible, who are just going along, who are buying into propaganda. And they're very aggressive often in their language around that. So you can wake up and then still find yourself as a child, or a toddler even, or a teenager, and be very aggressive, be very immature, be very unformed in what happens next. Like, you can't fight horse shit with bullshit. Otherwise it's one giant shit show. That's not going to help anybody. So yes, we must wake up. We must be sober. We must have a look around and think clearly about what's going on. But we also must grow up, because if we don't, we'll be speaking back out of insecurity, and that will end in tears. And we're more likely to lose because we have less power. So our power comes from the inner work. We must go internal here. That is our responsibility, to do the deep work, to be good human beings as an absolute priority. That is our resistance. And out of that, to then resist. And resist we must. This is why swearing was invented, by the way. At some point, it becomes entirely appropriate to stand your ground. And the strongest words you've got to stand your ground are fuck and off. Put them together, and there's a boundary. It's like, government, you cannot tell me what to do. Don't take away my freedom. That's not your role. That's not your right. How did this happen? And for me, the terrifying thing this week when I opened my eyes and had a look was that just the vaccine passport. I'm not too concerned about the vaccine itself, although I don't know what's in it. I don't know the long-term effects. But if I'm going to get really take the moral high ground about the toxins I'm putting in my body, I probably need to cut out crinkle cut chips, margarine, beer, genetically modified grains that make my white bread. And let's not even start talking about meat pies and hot dogs. So look, I might have a different opinion if I knew directly or was impacted directly by and had an experience of someone who's had a terrible reaction, and people have died for the vaccine. So again, that might be what is most upsetting to you. Personally, it's not what's most upsetting to me right now. It's the loss of freedom around the passports, because some people will come out of lockdown and some will remain, and then there'll be there's already a polarizing. There's already a lot of angst amongst people who normally got on well. Now, this further creates a divide, and it's alarming, the loss of freedom, and I'm not okay with it. And so it is my not just my right, it is my responsibility to say, fuck off. Don't tell me what to do. You're welcome to pitch to me, but pitch with skill. Don't repeat some rhetoric that you've heard from someone who has more power and there's some backroom deals that I don't know about. That's not going to work for me. That is actually not going to work for me. And I think that's a really important place to come to for each of us. Some civil disobedience has changed the world at all times through history. No. And if I'm secure, then you can't take anything from me anyway, because I don't need anything from you. So this is the vision for the Insecurity Project 2021 in these times that we live in, for us to solve the insecurity problem. It is our great challenge as a humanity right now. The great challenges are not technological, they are not biological, they are issues within human consciousness. And insecurity is the most destructive force within our human consciousness. It must be solved. Otherwise, we are all in a lot of trouble. The exciting development for me in the last couple of months has been working on an app, which is my best attempt at equipping people around the world to do this work in a really effective way. So I'm excited about this. I think it's a world first. I think it's an exclusive offering to feel like you've got a world-class coach in your pocket to help you stay within the 7 essential practices for how insecurity actually gets solved. So there's some really great tracking within that to manage your progress within the practices. There's some coaching responses and directives each week. There's exclusive content, how-to videos, cheat sheets, recommended reading, and there's group coaching that's offered through the app. So it's an exciting deal, and I'm really close to being able to officially launch it. I'm still at the trial phase at the moment. I've got my first 10 users stepping on this week just to run through and make sure it works as well as I think it does. So stay tuned for that. And if you've got any questions or you're really curious around how you can be one of the first users of that when it's live, reach out and let me know. And look, reach out if you've got any comments or any conversations about the content, the political content from today. In very important subject. Let's keep talking about it.